First one will be about the complexity of helping. I would argue that, and your opinion is the more important one, but I would argue that the reason why, in general, professional development tends to be unsuccessful is because we don't recognize how complex it is for one adult to help another adult. So that's the first thing I'll talk about. The second thing I'll talk about is the coaching cycle that we follow and how we go about taking teachers from 0 to 60, essentially, to set a goal and hit the goal. And then I'll talk about a few conditions related to successful coaching. There are certain things we feel if they're not in place, 6 different things, that chances are that coaches won't make a really significant impact on teaching. But if those things are in place, they should make a big, big difference. So the first thing is the 5 what I call simple truths about helping. They're from a book called Unmistakable Impact. I'll just talk about them briefly, and then if you can talk about whatever you want. But the question I would pose to you is, do you agree with this, and what are its implications for you? And if you disagree, that's your experience is your experience. So, the first simple truth, I call it, is that we found that most people don't know what it looks like when they do what they do. And I don't mean this in a negative way. I just mean that when we video recorded a classroom and had the teacher look at the video, in literally every case, people have said, that's not really what I expected to see. Sometimes they're delighted, but often they're disappointed. And nobody likes to watch themselves on video. Nobody says, man, I'm much younger and thinner than I thought. I've never heard of that. They say, I'm never going to wear those purple pants again. I mean, but it's really important that because people don't know what it looks like when they do what they do, they often aren't that open to change. It's not that they don't like change, they just don't see the need. And there are many reasons why people don't see what's happening in their classroom. Habituation, confirmation bias, there's a whole bunch of reasons you could stack up. But until the person knows what's happening in their classroom, they just sort of stay on the surface for professional learning. And they don't really have a deep change. So we believe you have to give people a clear picture of current reality to get the whole process started. Otherwise, it doesn't really happen. The second thing, the first simple truth is most people don't know what it looks like when they do what they do, and consequently they're not that interested in working. The second one is that people, their identity is deeply involved in their profession of being teachers, and because of that reason, it makes it difficult to talk about their practice. A simple way to put it is, people take it personally, deeply personally, when you talk about their teaching. It is almost as personal to somebody to teach as it is to be a parent. You want to get somebody upset, criticize their parenting. It's personal. You criticize my parenting, you criticize who I am as a person. But teaching is almost as personal. Parker Palmer says, the things I teach are things I care about, and what I care about defines my identity. And Stone and Heen, who wrote a new book, it's a really good book called Thanks for the Feedback, they say our identity is the story we say about who we are, the story we tell about ourselves. And real change will change that story. But changing that story is painful and difficult and awkward and uncomfortable. And so most people don't want to go there, at least not initially. But if you don't change that story, the real deep change isn't going to take place. Consequently, what happens is one of two things. We tell people the hard truth, and then they argue with us the whole time about why our perceptions of what they did is inaccurate. Or, the next time, especially if you're a coach, the next time you talk to that person, you can just feel your relationship has shifted. They don't treat you the same because it got personal. Or we don't even talk about what happened. We say to the teacher, what do you think about engagement? And they say, those kids aren't really into it. And so we never have the conversation. So either we will avoid the truth, or we say the truth and it can't be heard. It doesn't do us any good to speak the truth if it's not heard. The challenge is to speak it so it can be heard. And so the process of coaching I'll talk about is our way of doing it. The third thing, and this I referenced Thomas Davenport, who I think is at Northwestern, used to be it anyway, and he wrote a book called Thinking for a Living. He's a big business writer. And he studied knowledge workers, professionals, people who think for a living. To me, a teacher is a quintessential knowledge worker, one book hypothesizes that teachers make between 800 and 1,500 decisions a day. That seems like a lot to me, but it is a lot. You know, teachers are out, where am I in the curriculum? What are those kids doing? Are they listening? Are they engaged? Do I need to make an adjustment? The reason why teachers are tired at the end of the day is because it's so much thinking, not physically tired. And what Davenport did is, through surveys and interviews, he tried to identify the characteristics of knowledge workers, and he said, the number one characteristic of a knowledge worker is the need for autonomy. He said, thinking for a living engenders thinking for yourself. And if you do the thinking for another professional, they will resist. So that's the third simple truth. If we do the thinking for other people, they'll resist. The fourth simple truth has to do with Edgar Schein's work called helping. And he says that whenever one adult helps another adult, status is always at play. And if people feel they're not getting the status they deserve, they don't listen. Especially professionals, especially people with degrees, maybe multiple degrees, years of experience. If they feel that you put yourself one up and put them one down, they won't listen. And so a coach might sit down with a teacher, and the teacher might cross her arms and say, so you're going to tell me how to teach? Is that the story here? What they're really saying is, I'm not going to put myself one down. And so the fourth simple truth is that people perceive, well, another way of putting it is that if we take the role of being a parent and put a professional in the role of being a child, they're likely going to resist. So the way I put it is, if people perceive us as putting ourselves one up, putting them one down, they'll resist. Even if that's not our intention, it's what they perceive. And the last simple truth is this. If people don't care about the goal, no matter how worthy it is, they're not going to do it. And DC and Ryan's research on motivation sums this up. It's there in Daniel Pink's book, Drive. It's a good summary of it. So you could tell me the goal is we want all kids proficient in reading by 2015, but unless I care about it, the best you're going to get is compliance. So 5 simple truths. If you ignore these simple truths, your professional development, in my opinion, probably won't change things. The first one is, most people don't know what it looks like when they do what they do, so therefore they're not that interested in changing. Secondly is, people take it personally when we offer advice. Third thing is, if we do the thinking for other people, if a few smart people downtown create it and roll it out and we're supposed to implement it without any kind of input, we will resist. Fourth thing is, if people perceive us as putting ourselves one up and putting them one down, they'll resist. And unless I care about the goal, I'm not going to do it. So what do you think? I'll give you a couple of minutes to discuss it, and then I'll make some loud noises to try to get your attention. I think you've got some questions. The questions are, does that sound accurate to you? And what are its implications for you as a leader of change? What are your thoughts about it? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to talk about it. Then we'll open up the conversation. What questions or comments do you have? What questions or comments do you have about the first ideas there? I guess my question is, do you think it's accurate, what I just described?
Yeah.
So are there questions or comments? Yes?
I've been very honest with my teachers. And sometimes I have teachers that say, well, they're doing okay, so why change it? And I think that you have to be very honest with that teacher and tell them, we can grow in this area and help our students move forward, or perhaps this is not the right place for you. Because you want to have in your team people that have the vision that students can achieve even further. So coaching them, and when you see that they're not receptive to that coaching, you have to make that decision. But coaching them in a way that you're building what they already know. Sometimes what they know is good, but it's not good enough for our children. And you need to have those courageous conversations with your staff, because sometimes perhaps the vision that they have of success is very different from the vision that we all have of success for our students.
I think if it's working, don't change the thing. And if you only have 1 or 2 teachers who seem to be resisting, definitely don't change the thing. But if you find a lot of teachers are resisting, then you have to step back and say, is it because they feel they're one down and I put myself one up? Is it because they haven't been given choices? I think in America, more than any other country I've been to, we spend a lot of time telling teachers what they should do, and that positions them as skilled laborers and not professionals. We want our teachers to be professionals. But I will say this. I believe deeply that teachers need to have choices, but one choice that's not on the table is choosing not to learn. You think of the concept of a professional. An always present characteristic in professionalism is continuous improvement. So if a coach or teacher says, anybody says, I'm a professional, but I got it down, I don't need to improve, they're being unprofessional. So that choice isn't there. But I think, just another little anecdote along those lines is, I find when I sit down with teachers and we engage in dialogue about what happened in the classroom in a process I'm going to describe here in a second, that usually what we come up with to work on is better than what I would have said if I just told them what to do. When we talk about it together, they know the kids better than me. They see things I don't see. I see things they don't. Between the two of us, it works out. So I believe in courageous conversations when necessary, but so long as it doesn't mean I always have to tell people what to do and they just have to do it the way I said. It's okay. And you know what? If I thought telling people what to do was the best thing for kids, I'd be all over it. You know? But the trouble is, I don't want to be nice. I want the quickest change possible, which gets into the next part. So maybe I'll talk about the next part, which is, I really believe in the autonomy of teachers, but I think you need accountable processes. And one of the processes is how the whole school focuses on a target and moves forward. That's in the Unmistakable Impact book, but I just want to talk about the coaching process because we're going to kind of focus on coaching here. So there are 3 parts to it. If you imagine a little sort of cycle: identify, learn, and improve. So to identify a goal, you can stand up, or you feel like standing. Is it warmer over there? All right. So during the identify part, what I do is I want to get a clear picture of current reality. I want to set a student-focused goal, and then I want to pick a strategy to help us hit the goal. So I'll give you an example. One of our coaches video recorded a class, and the teacher watched the video, the coach watched the video, they got together, and she had a set of questions to ask. She said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how close was the class to the ideal? What would have to change to make it closer to the ideal? What would it look like? What would the students be doing? How could we measure that change in the students? Do you want that to be your goal? Okay, if that's the goal you want, is it one that really matters to you? Do you really care about that goal? And if you care about the goal, what's the strategy to take us there? Now, I have a blog called Radical Learners, and if you search back a couple columns, you'll find those goal-setting questions. So once we've got a goal based on a clear picture of current reality, which often is video, but it could be student work or it could be some of the kind of assessment. Video is just quick and clean. Then we have to learn the strategy. So one of our teachers recorded video of the class, or coaches recorded video of the class. The teacher realized that transition time, when they moved from one activity to the next, was taking 4 to 5 minutes per time. She said, that's way too long. Over 50 minutes, that's like 20 minutes of class time. Is just having the second graders move from one activity to the next. We need to get that instructional time back. They set a goal that the transition time would be less than a minute per time. And they picked as their strategy clear expectations for the students. And they said they'd also watch the video to see what else was going on. They realized when they watched the video a second time, when the video recorded another class, part of the reason is the kids didn't know what they were supposed to do as they transitioned from one activity to the next. But the main thing was, let's be crystal clear on what it looks like, let's model it, let's have the kids learn it. Then once they said our strategy is expectations, the second part, learn, they have a checklist to describe the practice. If you're going to teach a teacher how to do a practice, you have to describe it crystal clear, precisely. And we believe it's going to be difficult for a teacher to change their practice unless you can lay it out so they can see it in a crystal clear way. On the website, corwin.com, High Impact Instruction, there are dozens of checklists you can download that are free just to see it. After you describe it, though, the teacher still has to see it. We found talking about it doesn't do it. You have to see it in action. So sometimes we go in the teacher's classroom and model it right there with their kids. If we do that, though, we just show the practice itself. We don't teach the whole lesson. The teacher's learning how to use the Venn diagram. We just do the Venn diagram part of the lesson. And she watches us with her checklist. Sometimes we model it in the classroom with no students there. Just let me show you what it would look like. If I was doing I do it, we do it, you do it, it would kind of look like this. Sometimes we co-teach. Sometimes we watch another teacher together. Sometimes the teacher goes on her own and I cover the class. Sometimes we watch a video. But during the learning part, two things happen. One, I describe the strategy really clearly. And secondly, they see it in practice. And then the third part is improve, and that's where the teacher tries it out. And when she tries it out, the question becomes, did we hit the goal? If we hit the goal, then we say, do we want to pick another goal? Or do we want to take a break? Or do we want to keep working on this to get better at it? You're doing cooperative learning, it's working really well, what do you want to do? And if we didn't hit the goal, then we say, well, did we pick the wrong strategy? Or do we need to go back to the checklist and look at how we're doing it? Do we want to modify it? Maybe we want to go back and rethink it. Or do we just want to give it more time? If we give it more time, maybe it'll work. So that teacher who was using that coaching cycle to look at her transition time, she shrunk her transitions down to 20 to 30 seconds. They had to do some modifications. What they found is the last transition, the kids had to get up and do like the 7th inning stretch because they were restless for it. But they took it from about 20 minutes a day, 20 minutes a period for transition time, to less than 2 minutes. They added 18 minutes a day over 172 days. They basically added 6 weeks of instructional time just through that one little thing. So a quick summary, you identify a goal based on current reality, and you identify a strategy to help you hit the goal. Second part, we learn the strategy through checklists, precise explanations, and through modeling. Third part, we improve by asking, did we hit the goal or not? And we have different responses based on it. The whole way through, the teacher picks the goal, the teacher picks the strategy, even the teacher can modify the strategy. She can say, I don't want to do it like this, I want to do it like this. So long as you have a student-focused goal, that doesn't matter. The teacher says, I don't want to do I do it, we do it, you do it. I just want to do you do it. How's that sound? Well, I can say, well, let's find out. We've got a goal. You want to do it that way, we'll try it out. If it doesn't hit the goal, we'll come back and we'll rethink the checklist. So the whole way we position the teacher as a thinker, but the whole way we're driven to make a significant change in the quality of kids' lives. That's the idea of the process. So I would just say this. To really make a difference in the way a class is taught, it takes a lot more support than we think. And we've spent more than a decade breaking this process down. And it doesn't happen by chance. It has to be a crystal clear goal, clearly described practice, clearly modeled, a measurement of progress towards the goal, and it takes positioning the teacher as the one who makes the decisions the whole way. You just have to have a goal that makes a difference. So do you buy that? Does that make sense to you? And what questions do you have about anything related to sort of the coaching cycle? If what you're doing is working, don't worry about it. Keep doing what you're doing. But if you might say, maybe we should be more precise about the goals. Maybe we should have student-focused goals. Maybe we should be doing more modeling. Maybe we should be doing checklists. Maybe we should be measuring progress until we hit the goal. Anyway, what do you think about it? I'll give you a couple of minutes to talk about it, then I'll make those loud noises again.
I was wondering, what have you guys seen in terms of, like, the piece of him saying it, like, seen it in practice? What has worked for your teachers? Where that, like, is it going in and co-observing? Is it a video? What?
It's all the above. Model.
I think it's a combination of videotaping and modeling, and then doing peer observations and talking about it.
I think they're just talking. All right, so do you have questions you'd like to put out there? Questions or comments? Anything about the coaching cycle? Any questions or comments you might have? You're making eye contact over there like you've got a question. So.
Well, I think for me, the coaching cycle gets paired with the complexity of helping.
Right.
So
They're lined right up.
Right there, exactly. So I can't get you to identify what needs to be addressed if you don't have a true sense of your current reality.
Right,
and
exactly.
to do that, then you've got to own what you do. So there's got to be a marrying of those two.
I think you're dead on. And I think what happens is people don't want to go there. And what video does is, well, now I'm really looking at it. You know, it's kind of like if you don't use video or in some way get a really, like even if you do like some awesome observation, the teacher's going to look at that and say, in many cases, I don't think that's right. It's not that they're being defensive, they literally don't see it until they see the video. And then they go, oh, now I know what they're talking about, you know. So what happens is we stay on the surface, but video makes it real. Video says, okay, now we're dealing with something for real. And then once we've got a goal that matters to the teacher. Now, we're not going to say the teacher's goal is we want to make sure all the kids' shoes are tied. We're not going to say that's our goal. We're going to say we want to pick a powerful goal that's really going to have but it should be a goal that the teacher says, when I drive home at night, this is what I'm thinking about. This is the thing that matters to me. So we get something that really matters to the teacher, and then as a coach, we're helping them achieve their goal. But you can't do it on the surface. We're talking about, this is what I mean by accountable. My catchphrase is an unmistakable impact, unmistakable improvement in the quality of kids' lives. You add 15 or 20 minutes of instructional time a period, you increase engagement from 65% to 93%. That's you put those two things together. You know, you're going from 30% of the potential in the class to about 80% of the potential. You know, you increase engagement, you decrease non-instructional time. That's a lot more learning. They can still be learning crap, but they're learning it better. You know, but so you still have to look at the curriculum, and ultimately you move forward. But you take what you can, and you move forward. So I think I agree with you completely. And the thing is, I think most teachers do want to improve. There are a small number of people. I'll say the people who will be unhappy in heaven and be like, I'm so sick of harps, you know. But most people, when you get down to it, when they feel safe, when they feel they can trust you, and they really feel at ease with you, and they know you've got their best interest at heart, you know, you get them cornered, they'll say, I really do want to make a difference in kids, and this isn't working, and if you could make it easy for me, that would be awesome. But because of what's happened in the past, in many cases, people aren't trusting. They're not, you know, I asked my coaches, how did you get your teachers to watch video? Everybody wants to know, how did you get them to watch the video? They said, we just asked and they did it. I said, that's not much help. I said, why did they do it? And they said, they did it because they trust us. And if the teachers don't want to watch video is not the issue, trust is the issue. That's the thing. So, other questions? Yes?
I was just thinking, so you've been doing this for a while,
Yeah.
and video is the latest book you've written, and
Right.
Was it all the technological stuff that made video suddenly possible, or you discovered it for some other reason? Have you been using video for the last 20 years? Or?
We used video for a long time. My colleague Mike Hoke used video to train tutors in an approach he called strategic tutoring, and he found back in the early 90s, like 93, that until the tutors saw themselves on video, they didn't change their practice. Now he had checklists and he had video. But the trouble was you had to bring in this big thing, there was a VHS, you know, some kid had to run it, it was on a tripod, you had to sign it up from the library, and then everybody's like it was too much trouble.
Yeah.
But now you take your phone, you stick it in the corner, you push the red button, rock and roll. Now it's easy and powerful. So with the invention of the iPhone, and once the iPhone, I got the idea from Mick Jagger, actually. I was watching the World Cup, and he had a flip camera. And I said, what is that cool thing? And I found out about the flip camera. It only cost a couple $100.
Right.
And so we started, before the iPhone had the video capability, we started with the flip camera. Push the button, got the video, away you go.
Yeah, and then you could upload.
But now the iPhones, you know, high definition, sound quality is getting better. Different cameras like the GoPro can accomplish different things. But I just say most people use an iPad. That's the top choice. So it's one of those technologies that the way internet has changed travel. I think video will change professional learning. It's like a jet engine for professional learning. That's what it is.
What is the name of your book? The video?
Well, the video one's called Focus on Teaching. I like you asking me the names of all my books. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a question. Obviously, the technology is not the only problem.
Right.
You're talking about trust.
Right.
How do you build that trust so that it becomes part
Well,
of the culture?
a quick answer is there's a really good book on it called Teams by Amy Edmondson from Harvard. But in Focus on Teaching, I talk about a lot of different things. People want to know that they own the video. The first question will be, who's going to see the video? You probably need to establish some boundaries or guidelines about what will and won't happen. I wouldn't make it compulsory. I would make it a choice. I think if you say you have to watch the video, some people just, they really, I mean, we have some really magnificent coaches we've done our design research with. And when I bought the flip cameras, I said, okay, just pull out your camera, video record each other. I just thought we were just going to play around with it like a tool, you know, it'd just be fun. One of the coaches, whom I admire immensely, she looked at the video and she burst in tears. She said, I just can't take looking at myself. Now to tell her you have to do that, force it on her, you know. But now that she's a strong advocate for video. She had to go through this difficult process, but then she got comfortable. So, but there's other things about, you know, clear norms. And I think also if you establish teams, which is taking it to the next level, you got to make sure you don't have Debbie Downer on your team. I mean, if you've got somebody who builds himself up by tearing other people down, you don't want them sharing video with other people. So there's, I also think that where you come from, do you believe you're better than the teachers, or do you believe you're equal? And I think if you really do believe, you know, the notion that all people are created equal, and you live it out, that is, they have equal value, then people will trust you. But if you think your job is to judge others and tell them what they did right and what they did wrong, and put them in their place, then people won't trust them. You know, I think. So there's a lot of that going on. Okay, really quickly, the last part, and then I'll let you discuss this, and then it's dessert. 6 critical factors for coaching success. And this is also on that blog, although then it was 5. The first one is you know the process. You have a process to follow. You know how to set a goal, how to hit a goal. The second thing is you understand how to work with adults, which is really about positioning them as, it's taking into effect what Shine says, that if we put ourselves up, one up, and put them one down, they'll resist. So it's positioning ourselves as equals. Not that we have the same role or the same responsibility, but we count the same. Now, the third thing is you need to know how to gather data. And the Focus on Teaching book has a lot of tools for gathering data. I mean, if you're going to set a goal, you need to be able to measure whether or not you hit the goal. So you need to be able to measure whether or not you're hitting the goal. Fourth thing is you need to know teaching practices. If you're an instructional coach, it's better teaching leads to better learning. So you need to know what better teaching is. You don't need to know a whole bunch of practices, but a small number of high-yield, high-impact strategies. And you need to be able to describe them precisely and clear them and know what they look like. Most often, coaches don't know that. When I get people together and I say, like for example, I work with coaches in Colorado. They had 2 weeks of training with this expert in reading. And they were trained trainers in this whole reading approach. And I said, okay, let's take template number 1. Each of you get some chart paper, write a checklist to describe what's most important with template number 1. Everybody came up with a different checklist. And they had 2 weeks of training. So you have to pin it down. You have to know precisely what the practice is. And then the last things are communication. You need to be a good listener, ask good questions, build relationships, find common ground, communicate with respect, and leadership. The coaches, you know, we work with a lot of coaches. Some make a lot happen, some don't. The ones who make a lot happen have 2 characteristics. 1, they're deeply respectful of teachers and responsive to the teachers' needs. And the second thing is, we haven't got a good term, but we call it got it togetherness. They're ambitious, they're disciplined, they're organized, they get things done on time, they've got it together. And you can't be scattered and not following up and unreliable and undisciplined and not ambitious. You have to be almost pushy in a deeply respectful way. It's the thing that Jim Collins talks about in Good to Great, that idea of ambition and humility. But it's a little more precise because the coaches who make things happen, they're on the ball right away. They make it happen, but they do it in a way that's deeply respectful of the teacher. So 6 things. You understand the cycle, the coaching cycle. You understand how to work with adults. You understand teaching practices. Clearly, you can describe them with a checklist in a precise way that the other person can get it. You understand how to gather data. You have a few simple communication skills like good questions, listening, building relationships, finding common ground, and leadership. A combination of ambition and humility. So, this is your last chance to check in and say, well, what about this? What about resistant teachers? Or what about this? Or what about that? So just check in with your partners and say, what questions do you have before we eat dessert.
What did you say the source was, just for some of the tools you've mentioned?
Well, there's different places, but for checklists, it's Corwin.com. Corwin, Corwin, that's the publisher. Corwin.com, high impact instruction. But a website to go through for lots of other resources, and probably the main one to go to is just instructionalcoaching.com. And that's the one that has the coaches toolkit. That's all kinds of forums on how to coach coaches and tons of forums that coaches use, all that kind of stuff.
And the teams reference that you made, that's the trust.
The book that's about trust and teams, it's called Teams.
Yes.
And the author's name, and I might not be able to spell it right, but it's Amy Edmondson.
Okay.
That's E-D-M, I think M-O-N-D-S-E-N, something like that. But she's also got a couple little articles on Harvard Business Review that kind of capture a lot of the big ideas.
Yeah, it came up.
She's a great writer. Yeah.
So when there is an adult
Right.
who is in a position of needing to be coached, who does bring a lot of resistance, who doesn't seem interested in going through the coaching process, what are some good first steps?
Well, I think you need to be, if you see teachers as professionals, and that they should have some choices, I think you need to be firm on the standard, but flexible in how to get there. So you say, I was in your class, time on task was 65%, you got to get to 90%. I don't care how you do it. You can use your Ouija board if you want. You got to get to 90%. And so if you want to work with the coach, great. If you want to do it by reading some books, great. I'm going to come back, though, and you're going to get to 90%. We're firm on that. So you honor the teacher's autonomy. You let them choose how to get there. But you make it really clear, this is a non-negotiable. This is where we have to get to go. And I'm going to keep coming back. We're going to focus on this. And I think if you're firm on the standard and firm how to get there, you may lose some good teachers, and you probably increase resistance. So you need to be able to honor the teacher's autonomy, but also say, you got to get there. You got to hit this target. And I think too, in any system, there are going to be some things that have to happen. But if everything is a have to happen, then people will resist everything. But if people feel their voice counts, they understand the reasons, they have a say, then when it comes to a non-negotiable, if they've had a lot of voice in other things, they're like, okay, well, I get that. I'm okay with that. I trust it. But if they feel I'm being treated here like I work at Walmart and stack the shelves rather than I'm professional, we don't want skilled laborers raising our kids. We want professionals. Then they're going to resist everything. So once people feel they have I don't know, I think teachers are you put a group of teachers together who feel respected, they'll blow you away with what you'll do. There's still going to be a few who will be, like any profession, there'll be a few. But most of them really want to make a difference. And I see it again and again and again. Put them together, give them respect, give them the tools. They'll do a lot of good things. Yeah?
I have a question.
Is it about where Kansas City is?
Okay, I'm not going to live that down. A lot has happened. A lot has happened since I was 22. And it's been a long day, so I was confused.
The majority, when we fly into Kansas City, I always hear people say, we're going to Kansas, and I know we're going to Missouri. The airport's in Missouri, so I probably hear it every day we fly home. So you're in the majority.
Thank you for that. With the challenge of the Common Core standards and the integration of the standards, what I am discovering is that now, because of the depth to which we are to teach and what's required what's required from the teachers in order to help the students to be proficient in the standards, what are some suggestions that you may have in terms of how do you help to coach someone, especially a type 03 certificated teacher who is expected to be an expert of everything? So in the elementary school, they're expected to be proficient or experts in math and reading language arts and all of the areas related to those standards. So how do you now help teachers who may be struggling
Right.
with some of the math competencies, especially
Yep.
at the intermediate grades. We know that with our what was before Type 09, because they're endorsed at the middle school, and so they're expert in those particular endorsements. But for someone who has had a little bit of everything back in the day to become a master, an alleged master of everything at the elementary level, how do you begin to coach for people who it's not about practice, it's about pedagogy and understanding?
Well, first thing is, I think the complexity of helping applies there too. That is, if a few smart people downtown make a curriculum and then expect people to implement it, you're going to be lucky to get compliance. People have to be involved in the thinking, or else they don't have the same level of commitment. You've ever been on a curriculum committee and you've created, let's say, algebra, and you're going to go teach algebra. No kid in Illinois has had a better class than the one you're going to teach. You spent the whole summer eating pizza and creating this curriculum. But if you're not on the committee, it's just one more thing you got to do. So in Unmistakable Impact, I'm not trying to sell the book at all, because most stuff we put out there you can get. But in that book, chapter 6 is about creating teams where the people who teach the class come together and they rethink the curriculum together. Because I really don't think coaching is the way to increase pedagogical content knowledge. We help them with teaching practices, that kind of pedagogy. But when it comes to content knowledge, that happens better on a team. The more brains, the better. Because maybe you're good at statistics and maybe I'm good at geometry. Between the two of us, we can teach each other. So if we have 10 people or 15 people who are going to teach it, and I actually think special ed teachers should be there too, because they're going to need the knowledge.
Yeah.
And then they spend a lot of time together thinking through the guiding questions, the assessments, the learning maps. And you need to have whoever's in charge of math in the room, so that if they make a curriculum decision, she can say or he can say yes or no. It can't be all these people have worked hard, they've come up with a plan, and then the decision maker says, no, you can't do it that way. They have to be involved. But anyway, in chapter 6, there's a thing I call an intensive learning team. And I think it's best to have everybody involved in rethinking the curriculum. And it's like a PLC in the sense of you establish really clear norms, but you have to make it different than what people have done. So we interview everybody before they come, report back on the interviews, we establish the norms, we make it optional. We tell the teachers, this is going to be the curriculum, we're going to create it together, you're going to teach it next year. If you don't want to be there, it's up to you. But if I were you, I'd want to be there because we're going to make it happen. But if you really don't want to be there, you're just going to fight the whole time, and we'll just give it to you next year. That's the way it would have been anyway. But almost always, unless people are teaching an alternative course or something, they'll want to be there. And that process, to me, really works. Now, you still need a coach to help them take the things that are created and use them. When it comes to taking what's been developed and putting it in practice, that's where the coach comes into play. But the coach doesn't help them with the content knowledge as much as the coach says, here's how we take these guiding questions, these assessments. We're going to use formative assessment every day. I can help you get good at that. That's where the coach comes in. So that's a long answer to a really good question. But I would say, generally speaking, across the U.S., in most cases, the plans around translating the Common Core into practice fail because they don't involve teachers in the thinking. And so they're going to engender more resistance, and they're not going to change much practice because the teachers will do sort of the bare minimum. Or they'll race through the curriculum, and they won't, we covered everything. The only thing is nobody learned it. So.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
We have our teachers working on a lot of curriculum work together in teacher teams. But I have two teachers who like to tell me, it's just two and they're outliers, but they do tell me, I'm a teacher, not a curriculum developer. And so I can't be expected to write these unit plans that you're asking. We've done PD, we've studied understanding by design, and this is our second year of doing this work, and we've done it gradually, only one subject area at a time.
Right.
And they just keep telling me that they are not curriculum developers and they cannot be expected to do this work.
Right. Well, first off, when somebody doesn't want to do something, it's either because they don't think it's worth it or they don't think they can do it. So the first question I want to know is, which of those is it? It's going to be one of those two. Is it they don't think they can do it? If it's they don't think they can do it, you have to make it simpler for them. Not simplistic, but you have to make sure it's crystal clear and like checklists. This is how you're going to do the activity. If they don't think it's worth it, then you have to sort of address that in some way. But you have to figure out what that is.
They don't think it's worth it because they're still using a basil. When we clearly said a basil that's like from 1998
Right.
that they love. They said, I love this.
Well,
I've taught with this
so the
forever.
problem is not that they don't want to be curriculum developers, is they don't want to change their curriculum.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a whole different issue. That's an administrative issue.
Okay, so
That's for
you can go beyond this. What we're going to when the coaching, because
Right.
we've been so patient. I've been so patient,
Yeah.
asking her questions. Why might we try
Well, I would
this?
say to her, is the real issue
I'm just like getting questions.
is the real issue you don't want to develop the curriculum, or is the real issue that you like the other curriculum better?
I'll ask her that,
Yeah.
and that might be helpful
Right.
to find out.
You might not know or be able to tell you the truth, but I mean, I always want to
know
be.
how to do it.
I always want to be transparent with people and say, here's the situation. Here's, you know.
And I'll ask her what I'm looking
Right.
for. That's good. I'm just gonna
Okay. We should probably break for dessert, right?
If it has chocolate.
All right, so it is has chocolate. Okay. Thank you so much. I'll just tell you, if we want to follow up with questions, it's really easy. Jim at instructionalcoaching.com. So don't hesitate to just write. Have a great year. Go get them. Thanks, everybody.